What's going on, all my GOAT format duelists? ACP here, and I thought it was a bit overdue that we got an update on Angel Chaos. A lot of people have been asking me, for more about this deck. How I'd play it today. Is this deck still good? And that sort of thing. And believe it or not, it's as I'm recording this, it's August of 2021, which means it's been 4 years since I originally put this list together. And in that 4 years, this deck has, I think, fallen out of the meta quite a bit. For the most part, like some people still play it, but it's definitely fallen out of the meta. And that's not really surprising to me, to be honest. I mean, just think of how far GOAT format has come in 4 years. I mean, that is truly what makes it so amazing, is that 4 years later, the meta is still fresh and evolving as ever. And it shouldn't surprise anyone that 4-year-old deck lists, not so great anymore necessarily, right? Maybe they're playable, but definitely not optimal. So I love the fact that Angel Chaos is in many ways outdated, and I love the fact that Go format has so many different viable decks. I mean, I can't even keep track of how many viable decks there are in GOAT format anymore. There must be like 20 different ones. So I'm really happy with how far we've come. But people still do ask me about this deck a lot, so I just wanted to share my thoughts on it. Strengths, weaknesses. Give people some background, because I understand. A lot of people who are watching this video haven't seen the profile from 4 years ago. So that, some of you might not even be like, what the hell is this? What's Angel Chaos? So basically, as I said, Angel Chaos is kind of born out of the mid to late 2017 meta. And, back then, of course, everyone was playing GOAT Control for the most part. GOAT Control was the most popular deck. And the second most popular deck, believe it or not, was actually Chaos Recruiter. So Angel Chaos originally was kind of built to beat those two decks, right? I'm definitely a player who tries to make the best meta call possible. And, so I'm always looking at what the top decks are and playing whatever I think beats those. But, I have played Angel Chaos a little recently. I did try to make some updates for the current meta. Most of those updates are in the side deck here. I'd actually say that one of the downsides of Angel Chaos, and I think one of the things that's going to hold it back, sort of going into the future, is that the problem with the main deck is that, like, a lot of the cards are kind of like set in stone, and you don't have a lot of ways to sort of adapt the main deck to the new meta without just turning it into a completely different deck, right? So you could say, well, maybe Shining Angel and Tsukiyomi aren't that good anymore, but, well, if you think that, then now you're talking about playing a different deck. So most of these cards are staples. Like I said, a lot of the choices were kind of born out of the GOAT Control era, so we see some choices that now aren't super common, but in 2017 were super common, like 3 meta, 2 goats. We got 2 Tsukiyomi, 2 Magician of Faiths, 2 Magical Merchants, and back then, like, most people were playing all of these cards, right? These 11 cards that I just named, all quite common. So basically the idea here was I sort of took that GOAT Control core, because realize, although it's called Angel Chaos, this is really, when you think about it, sort of a different style of GOAT Control. So I took all of those GOAT Control, standard choices. Obviously now GOAT Control doesn't really play cards like Magical Merchant anymore. But I took all those and said, well, I know what's good with Merchant, Faith, and Tsukiyomi, and Metamorphosis is Shining Angel. And why is it so good with all those cards? Well, as we know, Shining Angel can obviously get DD Warrior Lady, which is, quite a good card. But Shining Angel can also search level 1s, right? Faith and Merchant. And then boom, that's your meta target. So, sometimes, one of the plays that you do with this deck is, say your opponent has, I don't know, some monster in play. Like they got like a Blade Knight in play. You might summon Angel, attack into their guy, search out Magical Merchant, and then main phase 2, meta the Merchant, get Thousand Eyes, take their guy. Right? That's kind of like a pretty standard play in this deck. Kind of your bread and butter. But, the other thing that Shining Angel does is, if, say, your opponent attacks over it on their turn, you can search, well, whatever you want. But say you get Magician of Faith, right? So they attack over your Shining Angel, you search Magician of Faith, and then on your turn, you can summon Tsukiyomi, flip down your Faith, flip it back up, get back like a Trinity piece or something, and that's pretty strong, right? That's pretty strong. And we also play 3 Book of Moon. In the original list of this deck, I only played 2 Book of Moon because everyone played 2 Book of Moon then, but pretty quickly I realized that Book of Moon is really strong in this deck because everything is a Book of Moon target, right? Angel's a Book of Moon target, Merchant Faith, that's a Book of Moon target, Chaos Sorcerer is a Book of Moon target, Dakochi's a Book of Moon target. You can Book of Moon your Sangan to save it from Chaos Sorcerer. So 3 Book of Moons I basically consider a staple of this deck. I know that 3 Book of Moon isn't a choice that we really see too much anymore. It kind of fades in and out of popularity, but with this deck in particular, I think Book of Moon has a lot of synergy here. And so basically the idea was Angel to get like Faith, Merchant, for meta is kind of our bread and butter. And then, if your Thousand Eyes dies, it's like, oh, well, now I have like 2 lights in my grave, right? The Angel and the target, and then 1 dark, right? Because that's Thousand Eyes. So, that kind of sets up for Chaos Sorcerer well, right? So basically all I did was I just took your standard Goat Control deck and just kind of said, hey, what if I played like, Shining Angel instead of like Abyss Soldier and played Chaos Sorcerer instead of Air Knight, right? That's basically all the deck is. It's just... Again, it's called Angel Chaos, but in a way, it's really like kind of a old school Goat Control variant. And then to fill out the rest of the monster lineup, we've got like 1 Dakochi, sort of 5th flip effect to go with Tsukiyomi, helps fill out your dark count. And the idea is, since this is a control deck, we're worried about the long game a lot, so. I like the fact that if they cross out my Dakochi, it banish, and they're playing 3, they have to banish 3 from their deck, whereas I don't have to banish any of mine. So that can, set up for us having more threats than our opponent later in the game, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, spells, nothing, not a whole lot jumps out. Traps, pretty standard traps here. One thing I will talk about is, we're only playing 5 traps now, which, before I would usually play like a Call of the Haunted as the 6th trap, but I think not doing that's kind of one of the sort of more modern changes. And I think that, in decks like this, Call and Pre just aren't that great anymore because a lot of people are running Chaos Sorcerer, a lot of people are running Kaiku. Heck, you even have zombie decks. I mean, even zombies are a thing now, right? They can Book of Life, one of your monsters in grave. So I was just like, I just don't want to be playing any revival anymore, right? I mean, it's fine. You can do it if you want, but I just don't think it's the right choice in this meta. And the other thing that I like about playing 5 traps instead of 6 is a lot of people also play Royal Decree now, right? I mean, Royal Decree, that's kind of a sort of new age hot tech card, and by only playing 5 traps, we don't make ourselves very vulnerable to Decree. So that's also kind of nice. So let's talk about some of the other modern updates in the main deck. 1 Kaiku, that's another card that's sort of a more new age choice. It's actually kind of funny because in 2017, the original list, like the very first list that I made, actually did have 1 Kaiku. But, in testing, I was like, because again, realized the most popular deck was Goat Control, and I was like, oh, Skilled Dark Magician is much better against Goat Control than Kaiku is. Mostly because Skilled Dark has better stats, right? But obviously now, 4 years later in 2021, Goat Control is hardly even seen anymore, whereas Chaos decks are everywhere, right? So although my card choices have changed, my logic kind of hasn't changed, right? The way that I'm tackling the meta is I'm saying, hey, if Goat Control is more popular, I'm going to be playing Skill Dark. If Chaos is more popular, I'm going to be playing Kaiku, right? So it's all meta dependent. All of these choices are meta dependent. So that's why we got that. I still like the one Kaiku, one Dakochi. If you just really think that like everyone and their mother is going to be playing Chaos, I think you could just main the second Kaiku over the Dakochi. But that's just kind of your call. So then another new update that we've got is we've got one creature swap in the main deck. Creature swap at this point, very popular in Goat Control. Some would even say that like in Goat Control, it's like almost a staple now. Here I'm only playing one, because we can't really abuse it as much as the standard Goat Control decks do. We're only playing 2 goats instead of 3 in the main deck. We got Tsukiyomis, but we don't have like Azura Priests, for example. But of course we do have, we do have 3 Shining Angels. That's pretty good creature swap target. So, we got some pretty decent swap targets, but swap being a little more on the situational side, to me it's a card that I'd rather play one of. Whereas, Book of Moon, for example, a card that has utility in almost every situation, I'd rather play, 3 of, right? So you could do like 2 Book of Moons, 2 creature swaps, but for me, I'd rather be playing more copies of the card that's good all the time and fewer copies of the card that's only good some of the time, even if creature swap, it can perhaps be like a bigger blowout than Book of Moon can. That pretty much covers the main deck. This is just sort of your classic card advantage based deck. Very good at, answering face-up threats, right, with Chaos Sorcerer and Thousand Eyes. So that's kind of the idea there. Moving on to the side deck, I actually put a lot of thought into the side deck. I think, some of my side decks aren't good, and I think a lot of GOAT format players in general don't really like put a lot of effort into their side decks. But here, there's kind of a reason for everything, so I'm just going to go over the full side deck here from start to finish. Jowgen and Roulette Barrel, I consider these kind of the 2 mandatory cards in your side. Technically, you can main deck these cards, depending on the meta, but like if you're not main decking them, they kind of have to be somewhere, right? So why do we have to have these? Well, they're good Shining Angel targets. So Roulette Barrel, pretty solid anti-aggro card. Is it going to win you the game by itself? Probably not, but it's solid. And it does make people's lives a little harder, right? So, if you have a face-down monster and your opponent, summons Blade Knight and attacks, maybe it's Magical Merchant, right? Maybe it's Magical Merchant and they go +1, right? Or maybe it's Shining Angel and, their Blade Knight kills your Shining Angel. Now you get Roulette Barrel. On your turn, switch Roulette Barrel to defense. Then you just start killing their monsters, right? So having this Roulette Barrel definitely makes you harder to play against, from an aggro player's perspective. And then Jowgen, same idea. Jowgen's actually picked up in popularity lately, just looking at people's decks. Not Angel Chaos decks, but just like Chaos decks in general. Because, hey, it's a light monster. Obviously, Chaos decks love their light monsters. And there are some decks that Jowgen is very strong against. Very strong against Reasoning Gate. That's still popular. Jowgen's even decent against Empty Jar, because they can't activate Shallow Grave Waltz in play. Not amazing necessarily, but it's decent. And Jowgen's pretty good against Chaos Recruiter too. Not that many people really play that anymore. But for the few that do, if they summon a Mystic Tomato attacking your Angel will search first, and then you get Jowgen and negate their Mystic Tomato's effect. That's kind of the idea there. So these I consider, kind of staples. These are the obvious cards. And then next, I'm going to sort of talk about my strategy for aggro. In general, I think aggro has always been one of the easier matchups for Angel Chaos. So if you're expecting a lot of aggro decks in your meta, I definitely think this can be a decent meta call. But, we got even more anti-aggro stuff in the side because, why not? So one thing that I've got in the side that I didn't used to have is third goats. And why is that? Because goats isn't like super insane in our deck, right? It kind of can conflict with Shining Angel. So it's not necessarily a card that we want to see all the time. However, the vast majority of aggro decks that people are playing right now in 2021 have problems dealing with goats. And, this is just kind of how the meta evolves, right? Where, it used to be that all the aggro decks were playing like cards like King Tiger Wangu and Azura Priest because everyone else was playing Scapegoat. But then the Scapegoat decks fell out of favor, so the aggro decks stopped playing the Wangus and the Azura Priests. But obviously, once they started doing that, that kind of made goats good against them again, right? So that's kind of, the layer of RPS that we're in right now, where most of these aggro decks are very underprepared against Scapegoat. And, since I am playing this main deck creature swap now, that gives me another incentive to want to have the third goats versus aggro. Because, blocks hits, good with meta, and good with swaps. So against aggro, we're definitely going to get some good value out of Scapegoat, so we kind of want to see it as often as possible. And, like I mentioned, we're only playing 5 traps to not worry about Decree very much. And the good thing about doing that is we can just side Decree ourselves, right? A lot of people are either maining or siding Decree now. Decree is definitely a strong card. Current format players can obviously understand how, hey, if I just play some card that negates like 10 of my opponent's cards, like why that's good, right? That's kind of been in their playbook for a while. So yeah, so against decks that play a lot of traps, we want to bring in Decree. And aggro decks are usually one of those decks. Obviously, you have like some aggro decks that play Decree themselves, but the standard builds of Warrior, we're talking usually more than 10 traps, right? Could be 12, 13 traps. So the idea is, hey, against those decks, we side in Decree. Side out like 1 or 2 Sakus, leave the Mirror Torrential in because, we want to get those 2-for-1s. And then we side in, the spells, right? We don't have Saku to protect ourselves anymore, so we side in the third goats. And same idea with smashing. So against aggro, we take out dead cards like Crossout. We take out a Saku. Maybe take out like a Book of Moon or something, and then we just put in smashing goats and Decree. So that's like kind of our plan against them. And then of course we bring in the roulette barrel as well. So that's the plan against aggro. It's not necessarily a new plan, but it still gets the job done, right? And I do think that having the third goats against aggro definitely helps, more than it used to. So let's also talk about Azura Priest. I think Angel Chaos decks have experimented with Azura a little, on and off, either in the main or the side. Here I kind of wanted it just because against other decks that play Scapegoat, I want to have some sort of answer to all of their goats, and Azura is the best way to do that. So it used to be when I was playing like Pre and Call, I would side Air Knight to deal with the goats, because the idea was, hey, if they kill my Air Knight, I can bring it back and keep attacking. But if we're not playing Pre and Call, Air Knight isn't really as good as it would be otherwise. So because of that, we've got Azura instead of Air Knight, because we don't play Pre or Call anymore. So Azura basically comes in against, your Mimic Chaos decks, your Chaos Recruiter decks, Goat Control, of course, the Mirror. Basically any deck that's playing 3 Scapegoat, we're bringing Azura in against. Azura is also randomly good against Monarchs. Not that a lot of people are playing Monarchs right now, but if you happen to run into that deck, Azura is very strong there, just because they can't Brain Control or Soul Exchange it. So yeah, so that covers that. And then last, that leaves 7 cards, right? These 2 Mystic Swordsmen, Kaiku, Zaborg, 2 Dust Shoots, and Duster. And I haven't really talked about these cards at all. So some Angel of Chaos players that I've talked to have actually tried playing Zaborg in the main deck, because Zaborg is really good against a lot of the Chaos decks that people are playing right now. The reason that I decided to not main it is because, yeah, even though Zaborg is good against most Chaos decks, it's like not really good against anything else. So to me, that kind of is more of a side deck card than a main deck card. But basically, the idea is, anyone who's familiar with the GOAT format meta, and the strengths and weaknesses of Angel Chaos in particular, knows that one of the weaknesses of Angel Chaos is that it can have a hard time against some of the more modern lists of Chaos that you see people playing. So I'm talking basically your sort of standard Thunder Dragon Chaos deck, your 3 Thunder Dragons, 2 Night Assailants, and, a bunch of Raigeki Breaks or Wing Blast, that sort of thing. Just because they're kind of playing a more streamlined, linear deck than you are, and they're just kind of the faster deck that can, kind of, at times it can overwhelm Angel Chaos. It's not like a terrible matchup, it's not an unwinnable matchup, but it's definitely not like what you're hoping to play against. So, I kind of realized, like I said, that most of the main deck is set in stone, right? So if our goal here is that I want to win a Chaos Mirror in Game 1, probably shouldn't be playing this deck, right? If our goal is to win Chaos Mirrors, I'd probably play like Mimic Chaos or just a standard Thunder Dragon Chaos deck myself, because I think I can build those decks better than most other people can. But, if we're basically largely conceding Game 1 to other Chaos decks, well, then we need to be very prepared in the side deck, right? It's one of those two. Obviously, Chaos is so popular at this point that we have to try to beat it somehow, right? Because if we don't, we're just not going to have a competitively viable deck. So it's obviously between, okay, are we going to beat it with our main or beat it with our side? And the main isn't really an option, so that kind of only leaves us with one option left, which is the side. So these 7 cards here, the 2 Mystic Swordsmen, the Kaiku, the Zaborg, the 2 Dust Shoots, and the Duster No, these all come in against your sort of standard-ish Thunder Dragon Chaos deck. And basically, the idea here is that post-side, we kind of like transition side, transition side, it's kind of a light transition, but we transition into almost like kind of a bad warrior mid-range aggro kind of thing. So I'll just put in all these cards here so you can see what the deck looks like post-side. So basically, the idea is the idea is that most of our defensive cards just get sided out here. And when I say defensive cards, I mean like defensive monsters. So sorry, I'm kind of having some trouble here. But yeah. So, okay, I'll show you what things look like post-side. Did I take something out that I wasn't supposed to? Oh, I think I lost a card here. Oh, it looks like Dust Tornado disappeared. So let me find that. Okay. So this is what our deck looks like post side. So you'll see here, one of the key things that we do is we take out 1 Chaos Sorcerer, and the reason why is because, post side for a Chaos Mirror, they're usually gonna bring in their Kaikus, they're gonna bring in their Dust Shoots. So by just slimming down and going to 2 Chaos Monsters, we make that less of a problem. And in the Chaos Sorcerer's place, we bring in Zaborg. Kind of, in a way, it's kind of a similar boss monster. Like I said, very good against sort of your standard Chaos deck. Not very good against anything else. That's why we sided in. We go to 2 Kaikus. That's kind of obvious. And then we bring in the 2 Mystic Swordsmen. And basically, our idea post-side is that we're just going to try to win with these aggressive monsters that just happen to be very strong against Chaos. And since our plan post-side is attacking, I realized that we kind of needed some way to help force these monsters through when they attack. So that's why the Dust Tornado comes in as well. And obviously, like, Dust Tornado has utility against other decks. You can bring it in against Burn. You can bring it in against Gravekeepers, that sort of thing. But we also like it against Chaos. And you'll notice here, post-side, really the only defensive monsters are, like, 2 Magician of Faiths and 1 Dekochi. And even Dekochi can attack for some damage, right? So you'll notice we basically kind of end up with this mid-rangey deck where we're really just trying to capitalize on very specific monsters, right? We're trying to get info with Trap Dust Shoot, see what their hand is, and then go, oh, okay, I know their hand. Now I can get my Mystic Swordsman hits through. I can get my Kaiku hits through. And we can kind of still do some of the same things we do in Game 1. We can still take their guy with 1,000 Eyes, flip it down to Tsukiyomi, that sort of thing. But it's not really as much a core part of our strategy. We're mostly trying to win by attacking. So that wraps up the profile. And, if you made it this far and you're curious, like, what am I building my deck in here? So for those who are new to my channel, this is Goat Duels. This is the new Goat format exclusive dueling simulator that I'm working on. And you'll notice, for example, there's no fusion deck because, in the simulator, all of the fusions are preloaded. You don't have to build a fusion deck. And, the simulator's in beta right now. It's got a lot of great features, a lot of great Goat-specific features. It does things like if you need to search a Shining Angel, it filters your deck by all legal targets. It does things like, hey, when you activate Scapegoat, it automatically makes 4 tokens. You don't need to put them out one by one. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you guys, go to goatduels.com, click register. It'll take you to the beta page, and that will give you some more info about how to sign up. And, I'm very pleased because I've made a lot of progress on the simulator, even faster than I was expecting. The beta testers have all been extremely helpful. They've given great feedback. They've been wonderful to work with. So if you want to join, a friendly Goat format community, be sure to check it out.